Well, New York City did it again. They broke some records by now putting up on the primary ballot the farthest left politician we've seen in a long time. The new candidate, Mr. Mamdani, goes to the left of Chicago's mayor. Is this going to be good for New York or bad? And more importantly, is this a one off event or does it portend something bigger in the transition to the digital economy? Let's take a look at that on this episode of The Steve Beeman Show. So yesterday, in what was otherwise quiet election, a Mr. Mamdani was elected by the Democratic voters of New York to serve as their primary candidate in the upcoming general election for mayor. Well, the fact that New York City hates Republicans, it's almost certain that a Democratic candidate's going to win that general election. And if that happens, Mr. Mamdani and his, quote, Democratic Socialist will rule New York for the next many years. Is this a disaster for New York? Possibly, we'll talk about that. But is this portending and playing out something bigger? I think it is. I think this simply is beginning to show the unrest people are feeling in the transition to the digital economy, and they're grasping at straws to find solutions. The easy solution, of course, is to go for the free stuff. The political hypocrites who are going to say, I'll give you free food, controlled housing, free everything. Well, that's not good because it heads toward a very dystopian future. The other side, being extreme liberty, may be a harder pill to swallow, but it leads to a much better life for the people involved. So let's be clear. As I said, I don't think this is just a local race. I think it's symbolic. Mamdani's win is part of this trend that I see, and that's especially in young people. It's the disillusionment of what they have now. That disillusion isn't totally without foundation. Obviously, we've seen a world in which college has gotten so outrageously expensive, the debt these kids carry is unfathomable. In addition to that, we're seeing the breakdown of traditional roles, families, religions, all of the postmodernistic values that we're beginning to incorporate just create confusion and chaos. So young people especially are looking for solutions, and they're looking for leaders who can provide them an answer that they can tolerate. Well, the two answers that increasingly will be showing themselves, in my opinion, in what will become a bifurcated economy is one side that says, I want to give you extreme freedom. Government is not the answer to this and can never be. The other side, I want to give you controlled freedom with government at the core of your freedoms. I tend to fall on the side, obviously, of extreme freedom because I don't want the kind of controls that could come with the government control. That's what we're going to talk about today because I think this is bigger than just a local election. I think this is all about the transition from the industrial capitalistic economy into the digital capitalism of the future. When people feel economically dislocated, as many of them do in New York, they're always going to go to look out for what's easiest. When Mamdani comes out and says, I'll give you rent control, they don't think about that may cause shortages in housing. When he says, I'll give you free food, they don't realize that could create empty shelves. What they're doing is grasping at straws for an easy solution in a disrupted economy that they don't understand. And that economy is going to become more disrupted over time for more and more people. I mean, how many times have you heard me say on this program and in live speeches and seminars that I believe we're heading toward a time when we see what I've referred to as the 10-10-10 economy. But even sometimes I think I could be wrong. It could just be the 10-10-80 economy. But either way, you're looking at an economy that's bifurcated into producers who actually have capital and have deployed it in technology to innovate and execute on that technology, and everybody else who either is going to get their means of survival from the government or they're going to figure out how to do it on their own using that very same technology to give themselves the leverage they need to do it. I hope that that will be the side because this is a system that has been shown to fail. When I heard Mamdani talking and I thought, my God, I've heard this story many of you don't know me, but I spent time with people from the Soviet Union back in the late 80s. And when you talk to them and you realize the dysfunctional nature of socialism in general, how it just destroys the desire for people to work, it makes people get forced into jobs they may or may not want. And somebody once, I was in a speech and somebody said, well, what about democratic socialism? And I made a comment to them, and I'll say it to you now. I don't believe there's anything even remotely close to democratic socialism. Let's remember that socialism is the government taking over the allocation of resources. So in the case of New York, he wants to take over grocery stores. He wants to give out people free stuff. Okay, well, who's going to produce free stuff? Who's going to sell free stuff? Who's going to build companies that distribute free stuff? The answer is nobody. So what will happen is the city of New York will find itself without those resources, and they'll begin to import laws or input laws that demand that distributors sell to their grocery stores or else. Well, that's not democratic at all. Democracy and socialism are incompatible. And go back to the Soviet example. When Lenin took over Russia in the late 1920s or in the early 20s, they had this idea that everybody would contribute to society's benefit. So they went to the farmers and they said, you guys, we're going to take the food you produce and we're going to send it to the cities because that's where they're starving the most. Well, the farmers were like, no, we need that food for us. So what happened is after a year or two, the government taking the food, the farmers quit producing. Well, as a result of that, you have the mass slaughter of the farmers in the Ukraine and other parts of the Soviet Union because they just wouldn't cooperate. Socialism, in that sense, forced them, in that case, to become producers of food. Now, as a forced service, they didn't produce as much. Their productivity was way less than the free market Americans. And that's what caused the demise of that system. When you take away the incentive people have to excel, and you take away the meritocracy of a free market system, and you put in place the demands of a socialized system, the system collapses on itself. And that's happened in Russia, Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, or anywhere else that's been tried. Now, I hear people say all the time that the Norwegian countries of Norway and Denmark and Sweden, they're more socialist than the United States. That's not true. They're actually more free than the United States. Differing tax rates, to be sure, but taxes don't necessarily mean socialism. Socialism is when Mamdani wants to take over an industry like he has said he wants to do with groceries. He also wants to put more rent controls on. Well, what happens when you control the rents? You just get less of it. If there's no money to be made, people won't do it. Now, that doesn't even begin to mention the massive amounts of money that will flood out of New York. It won't take many of the remaining business people in Wall Street to move out to have New York truly run into a revenue crisis. But again, I go back. I don't think people necessarily are thinking through what they're voting for, but what they're saying is, I feel dislocated. I feel like things aren't going in the right direction for me. And I will grasp any straw out there that says they have a solution. Well, the democratic socialist, again, to use that phrase that I just disagree with, but the socialist says, I'll give you free stuff. I'll tax the richer guy to give you more. Now, that creates an entitlement system, which I think we've seen not work. In Chicago, they gave away free housing for decades. And if you're from Chicago, you know of the Robert Taylor homes or Cabrini Green. They didn't work so well. Free housing led to becoming just drug kingpin areas. They were violent zones because there was no money there that people had to pay. They lived there on Section 8 or free, and as a result, they didn't care about it. There was no desire to make it better because it wasn't theirs. In addition, Chicago tried the food pantries. We tried free food. It didn't work either. People didn't get enough, so they got mad, or suppliers wouldn't supply it. So this idea that New York will go down the path of trying won't work. It'll create a malevolent economy that isn't growing at all. Now, the problem you've got, and I go back to this time and time again, because socialism doesn't work. But I would argue that industrial capitalism is dead as well. We no longer need capital to run the economic engine. Technology is going to do it. Now, that can either displace you or you can use it to enhance your own abilities to generate value. I would hope that people are more and more looking for, this idea of freedom rather than what it used to be called central planning. In the Soviet Union, they had 5-year plans. So they centrally plan the economy. What you're looking for, if you keep going down this path, is what I call algorithmic planning. It won't be the bureaucrats doing it. It'll be some algorithm. And computer algorithms tend to want to go for efficiency. They don't care about your feelings. They don't care about anything else. They just care about efficiency. So in an algorithmically planned economy, I think it becomes dystopian real quick. I go back. I've talked about the 10-10-10 economy, and some would say, that's changing from the standpoint of if you have 10% who are free and prosperous in this decentralized economy and 10% ruling from above with their big tech, the 80% of the people, 70% are superfluous. Well, the way you get by that isn't through government. It's going to have to be through yourself. And you're going to have to learn to use technology to help you generate an income over and above what will be government guaranteed living wages. I feel for the people of New York. I understand why they did this, but I also think it's dangerous ground because what they're doing again is saying that in a dislocated economy where we've moved from industrial capitalism to digital decentralized capitalism, the decentralized economy, I don't want to participate in it, therefore I'll give it to government. Government is a very difficult master, and they will take more and more, and they will give less and less. I think anybody involved in government social systems today understands you don't live well on the government because they only get their money from those of us who pay taxes. Government doesn't have anything on its own. It has to take something from someone else that it gives to you. So I got into this discussions when I did the billionaires, millionaires, and hypocrites. When you look at a billionaire, and let's say a person has $1 billion, and you say, I want to tax that because it's unfair that they have that much. So you take out $400 million. If you leave it in the hands of the billionaire, they're going to invest or spend that $400 million. That goes directly into the economy as a boost. It either builds additional plant equipment capacity as an investment, or they spend it, which creates jobs. If you send the same 400 billion to government or 400 million to government, what does that do? Well, first they strip off a couple $100 million for the bureaucracy, and then they funnel it down into small benefits for a lot of people. Nobody's better off. All we did is we slowed down the economy from a job creation standpoint, and we've stopped the investment capital that could come in otherwise. So this idea that the democratic socialists or socialists, whatever you want to call them, I tend to think they're just pure socialists. When they say they want to give more benefits to New Yorkers, all they're doing is taking it from somebody else. And when you take it from someone else in New York, they're just going to leave. And then what do? I think it was Margaret Thatcher that said socialism works till you run out of the other guy's money. Then what do? This idea of free stuff out of the government will never work. But I go back, in the decentralized economy that we're headed toward rapidly, traditional means of employment, traditional metrics of value, all of that stuff is changing. And as all of that changes, you either have to adapt to it or you're going to be one of those left behind looking for somebody to solve the problem for you. I urge you today to begin looking at AI. Learn what it does. Learn how it works. And what we have today isn't very sophisticated in terms of what will be. But you look at Grok or ChatGPT, these publicly available large language models. These will give you a flavor of what's coming down the line. But when you go to the next level, which are large reasoning models, and you tie those with machine learning, blockchain, tokenization, and all the other things that come with the decentralized economy, now you're looking at massive shifts. And if you're not with that, you're left behind you're going to be caught up in this disgruntled group that says, okay, we'll take socialism as our solution. I tell you now, mark my words on it, if you choose that, as we enter the decentralized economy, the controls on you, on what you can buy, how you can buy it, where you can travel, all of that are going to be very real. I say it again, the controls on you will be very real. China has their social score, and I've preached about this for years. We're not far from having that in the United States. And when they can tie that to the value of your currency, and if you're on social welfare from the government, I guarantee you they will, if you obey them and do what they say, well, then you'll be fine. But what if you don't? What if you disagree with them? And so you want to come out on social media or any other platform and you want to say, I disagree with this. How are they going to handle that? Are they going to devalue your currency? Restrict the kind of food you can buy? They do it in China. Why can't they do it here? And that's what, when we talk about these things together, the decentralized economy is going to change everything. But I urge you to go down the path of extreme freedom. Take responsibility for yourself and use these tools to build up your own value situation rather than being stuck in algorithmic servitude. Because the algorithms will run all this. And I don't think you want to be on the side that's run by those. So we're digitizing, by doing this, a caste system. And that's my opinion. I've been preaching it for 15 years. I think I'm seeing it happen. So to the people of New York, before you go down this path of saying government's your solution, you better be very careful what you're asking for. It can do a lot more damage than you think. The other option being freedom. Freedom from things that restrict economic activity. Give the micro businesses the freedom to flourish. Cut taxes on micro businesses to zero. Cut regulation on micro businesses to zero. Let people come up with their own ideas in the idea economy and utilize technology to take those ideas to market. It's possible. It can be done. And I think we can do it. I think the people of New York can do it. So as people continue, going down this path, I think you're going to come to see this isn't left or right issue. The old school is dead. It's gone. We don't have the traditional Democrat and Republican ideals anymore. The digital, decentralized economy is changing all of it. Schools will change, banks will change, legal systems will change, accounting systems will change, manufacturing systems will change, transportation systems will change, communications, entertainment, name it, it's going to change. And it's doing it fast. This isn't Star Trek. This isn't 10 years from now. This is today with increasing speed tomorrow. So be aware that giving up control to the algorithms or the government could lead to an extraordinarily dystopian future, leading toward the freedom to execute it on your own without that reliance. Okay, that requires some gumption. I get it. But again, if we work together and we help build a digital decentralized economy together using blockchain and tokenization and all those other things, we can make it work for a better life for everybody. So you have to think about this because it's going to be about who owns you in the digital age. Is it the algorithms or is it you? Well, keep an eye on it with me, my friends. And as always, stay sovereign, stay safe, and stay free. Thanks for watching.